Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Human Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The keys hit the ceramic bowl with a clean clink. Sloan slipped past the doorway in a rain-slicked trench hair, pulled high the breath of cold Seattle air, trailing her into the kitchen. Steam clouded the windows. The pot roast burbled cinnamon and onion rising from the Dutch oven like a memory you could eat. "My parents are taking the primary," she said, already moving toward the stairs. "You can move into the office. It will be easier for you to keep up." Evelyn kept her hand around the wooden spoon. She could feel the heat through the handle, a steady thrum against her palm. The stove light threw an amber pool over the tiled counter over the nick where Jack had once dropped a knife and laughed about it for a week. The perfume on her wrist was a thin veil of flowers. It made her think of spring on purpose. "In my house," she said. It came out soft. Sloan smiled without looking. "The primary has the only real shower. The balcony helps Dad's breathing. You know Spokane is dry. They are used to space." "Noah is at work," Evelyn said. "We can discuss this when he gets home." "There is nothing to discuss." Sloan touched the faucet with one finger as if testing the temperature of the room. They deserve to be comfortable. The spoon trembled. Evelyn set it down. The lid of the pot settled with a hiss. She looked past Sloan's shoulder to the wall with the framed black and white pictures. Jack in a silly paper hat on their first Thanksgiving here. Noah at 7 lost in an oversized hoodie grinning at a burnt batch of rolls. The frames were a little crooked. They always had been. It made the house feel like a person. Sloan followed her gaze. "We should switch these out," she said. "Modern frames, less clutter." Evelyn wiped her hands on the apron that had been washed so many times it felt like cloth made of memory. Rain ticked on the back door. Somewhere a gull cried a sharp note over Ballard's quiet streets. "When do your parents plan to arrive?" she asked. "Sunday morning." Sloan checked her watch. "We will need the room cleared by Saturday night. The office is fine for you. You do not use that much space anyway." Evelyn watched Sloan leave the kitchen. The house took a slow breath. The sound of traffic spread thin on the wet street outside. The roast simmered patient. She cracked the lid until the smell filled the small space behind her eyes. It was the smell of Thursdays, of Jack's hand on her back when he reached around to steal a carrot from the pot, of a window open to the alley and a baseball game on low. At 5, Noah's boots came up the porch. A scatter of droplets shook from his jacket as he stepped in. The keys in his hand missed the bowl and clattered against the console. He corrected, embarrassed like a boy caught in church. "Smells good," he said, scanning the counter for something to do with his hands. "It is Thursday," Evelyn said. She set the table. The napkins were folded in a way Jack liked, the way that never stayed put. Sloan came down with her laptop. "We need to talk schedules," she said. "Move in, bathroom, use quiet hours." Noah flicked a glance at Evelyn. It was quick, a small bird of a look. "Maybe we can go over it after dinner." "I prefer doing things efficiently," Sloan said. She opened the laptop. "Evelyn." "I put the laundry basket by the back door. Hanging clothes on the front porch reads messy from the street. We should present well." Evelyn's hands went still on the napkin. The house had never been a product to present. It had been cedar and plaster and the scratch of an old radio, a place where summers expanded and winters tucked in. She nodded anyway. She poured water into 3 glasses. It was the thing she could control. They ate. Noah complimented the carrots. Sloan pushed aside the gravy, said something about sodium, took a picture of her plate, laughed, deleted it. "Mom," Noah said when the plates were stacked and the sink was running, "Sloan's folks are going through a lot. They lost the house. It is temporary. We can make it work." Evelyn turned the faucet down so the water made a gentler sound. "Temporary like when you both came home," she said. "I like having you here." Noah rubbed the back of his neck. His wedding ring made a small scrape against the grout line on the counter. "It is different now." Sloan slid between them, all lightness. "You will love Don. He tells the best stories. And Mom's an amazing cook. We can all use her recipes. Elevate things a little." Evelyn thought of the small wooden box on the top shelf of the pantry. Index cards the color of tea. Jack's blue ink and block letters. Sunday rolls. Summer corn. Cinnamon pot roast. She stepped to the pantry and shut the door with care as if the closing was a promise. When they went to the living room, Sloan reached for the frames. She took down the picture of Jack with the paper hat and set it on the console table. "Just testing a cleaner line," she said. She moved the couch 2 inches. She ran a hand over the throw pillows and smoothed their corners. The room shifted a fraction like someone had tilted the axis of a planet. Evelyn did not say no. She straightened a lampshade and sat in her chair by the window. The cushion fit her spine. In the glass, she could see the hydrangea out back. Even in winter, the bones of it were beautiful, a mound of pale wood and faded heads that held on. Jack had planted it the first spring after they moved in. He had said the soil liked coffee grounds. He had told her flowers could teach you everything about patience. Noah scrolled through headlines on his phone. Sloane filled the quiet with talk about move-in lists and mattress toppers and a little project she might do to the pantry. Evelyn listened until the words became the low hum of a refrigerator. The clock on the mantel ticked. Later, when the dishwasher was loaded and the lights were off, Evelyn walked the length of the hall. The third step complained under her heel. She smiled a little because it always did. Jack had meant to fix it. He liked things a little imperfect. He said it was how you knew you were living in a real place. In the bedroom, she laid a hand on Jack's photograph. The silver frame was cool. The room smelled faintly of clean sheets and the flowers on her wrist. The balcony door was locked. The tiny red light on the heater blinked. Outside the alley glistened a black ribbon under the street lamp. She could see the shape of the hydrangea, a shadowed dome against the fence. She slept shallow, rain softened toward dawn. Friday morning she brewed coffee and watched the steam climb. The kitchen window was a square of wet light. Sloane's coat was already gone from the hook. A note sat on the counter. Meeting at 8, Pilates after, do not wait. A line underneath said, quiet hours 10 to 7, a smiley face. Evelyn rinsed her cup and set it upside down to dry. She put on her rubber clogs and a sweater that had gone gentle at the elbows and opened the back door. The yard had the smell it always had after rain. Soil, cedar, something sweet you could never name. She went first to the hydrangea. The stems showed green right at the nodes. Winter had not ended it. She touched a leaf and it crisped under her finger. She brought her hand to her face and sniffed just because she always had. The scent hit like a bright knife. Not soil, not rain. The sharp hospital clean of bleach, metallic and high wrong in the cold air. It burned the back of her throat. She stepped back and the clogs sank a little into the soft earth. On the concrete by the hose spigot, a faint splatter had filmed toward white. She stood still in the wet quiet. The fence hummed with the traffic 2 streets over. Somewhere a dog barked twice. She looked down at her fingers. They were shaking and also very steady. She leaned in again closer because she wanted to be sure. The smell was unmistakable. She straightened and looked at the kitchen door. The house watched her through its square of fogged glass. The keys in the ceramic bowl were only a sound in her head, that small clink still traveling. She left the hydrangea and went back into the kitchen. The door made a soft seal and shut out the street. The scent of bleach clung to her even after she washed her hands. Coffee brought its own weight into the room, dark and steady. She poured a mug and stood at the counter without drinking. On the floor beside the trash can, a corner of an index card showed itself. It was the color of old tea and had a smudge of oil along one side. Evelyn set the coffee down and lifted the lid. Paper, not just paper. The box from the top pantry shelf had been emptied and tipped. Cards lay among eggshells and an apple core streaked with onion skins and a line of gravy. Jack's handwriting moved in clear blue letters through grease and crumbs. She picked up the first one with 2 fingers and read Sunday rolls. Her eye blurred and then found itself again. She fished deeper, careful, slow setting each card on a clean dish towel spread over the counter. Cinnamon pot roast, summer corn, lemon bars for when Noah lost his front tooth. A bent one that only said Jack's Chili traced twice as if he had pressed the pen too hard the first time. Coffee went cold. The house was very quiet. The back door opened. Sloane set a yoga mat against the wall and swung the refrigerator door wide. Evelyn kept working, moving the cards out of the bin and into the light. Water ran in a slow thread from the tap. She let it trickle over the backs of the cards, then blotted them gently with another towel. "What are you doing?" Sloane asked. She did not step closer. She looked as if she was checking the fridge for a missing item and had found something unnecessary instead. "These were in the trash," Evelyn said. "They were covered in grease. And they take up space." Sloane reached for sparkling water. "Recipes are online. We can print new ones." "They are his hand," Evelyn said. The card in her fingers went almost translucent with water. Blue ink held. Sloane took a sip and leaned against the counter. "Clutter can be sentimental. It still clutters. She cracked the can so the air popped. "I will buy sleeves for the 3 you actually use." Evelyn turned off the tap and laid the wet cards out in rows. The kitchen window fogged at the edges. Distant traffic sounded like a river that had forgotten where to go. She arranged summer corn beside Sunday rolls and felt something place itself in her chest where it could not be moved. "By the way," Sloane said, tossing a glance at the hall, "we need clean visuals if your friend drops by. The front porch is not for drying sheets. It reads a little desperate from the street." "Diane is coming for coffee," Evelyn said. "Good. Text her next time." "Noah works late. He needs sleep." Sloane smiled like it was helpful, took another sip and left the room without closing the fridge all the way. Cold air hummed into the kitchen. At 10, Diane tapped the back door with 2 knuckles and peeked in. She wore a scarf that looked like a small storm and brought a bag of scones wrapped in paper. Her eyes softened when she saw the cards spread on the towel. She reached out, touched a corner with her nail, and said nothing. They took their mugs into the garden. The hydrangea sat under its dome pale and a little ragged. The air was damp enough to taste. The fence held droplets. Evelyn told a story about Jack and how he had once planted the hydrangea too close to the fence because he wanted to see it from the kitchen sink. Diane laughed in a soft way and covered Evelyn's hand with hers on the table. They were still laughing when Sloane stepped out onto the stoop. Her voice was light in volume and loud in intention. "Could you keep it down? Noah has a headache. He's trying to rest. Next time, let me know before you invite people over." Diane stood, her scarf shifted on her shoulders. "Of course," she said. She put a palm on Evelyn's arm. "I will call you later." Evelyn watched her leave through the side gate. The latch clicked like a small clock striking, an hour no one expected. She sat back down. The garden smelled like cedar and something far too clean. She stayed a long time until her mug cooled. Inside, Sloane's laptop spread its light onto the dining table. A printed sheet hung on the fridge with a magnet that looked like a salmon. House guidelines, the heading said. Quiet hours 10 to 7. Laundry out of sight. Candle fragrances only. Pantry reorg in progress. Underneath, in smaller type bathroom schedule TBA. Noah came out of the bedroom with his hand in his hair. He had the look of a person who had been woken too soon and was trying to catch up. He kissed Evelyn on the temple and reached for a glass of water. His eyes shifted toward the cards without landing. She asked Diane to whisper. Evelyn said. She kept her voice even. "It is morning." He drank half the glass. She did not mean anything by it. She is trying to make things smooth. Smooth for who? For all of us. He set the glass down and looked at her. "Mom, can you just work with her?" "She's doing her best." "My best came before you were born," Evelyn said. It slipped out before she could check it. She watched it land between them. He blew out a breath. "Do not make this a thing. Please." He picked up his phone and escaped back down the hall. The third step on the stairs made its small complaint. That afternoon, the house felt like a person who had just had furniture moved and was waiting to see what had been taken away. Evelyn put the cards in a wide glass dish to dry. She set the dish in a square of sun that had found the end of the counter. Sloane rearranged the living room only a little but enough. The couch angled toward the window. The frames that were still up lined themselves in a straight grid. The picture of Jack in the paper hat remained on the console face down like a book set aside mid-chapter. Sloane approached with an empty diffuser bottle. "We should avoid strong scents. Synthetic blends trigger migraines." Evelyn lifted her wrist and caught the faint flowers that had become part of her skin. "I have worn this for years." Then Noah is used to it. "My parents are not." Sloane smiled. "It will be an adjustment." Evening brought rain back in a fine thread. Evelyn made soup and put a loaf of bread in the oven. She could feel the day collecting in the back of her neck, heavy as if the weather had taken up residence there. Sloane set the table with placemats that said, "Gather." Noah came to dinner with the distracted look he wore when he was still half at work. Between spoonfuls, Sloane reviewed a list. Move-in window, grocery rotations, guests. We should have a shared calendar. I will set it up. "We used to write things on the wall by the phone," Evelyn said. Sloane laughed. "That is cute." Noah cut the bread. He did it the way Jack did, sawing a little, then pressing down with his palm. The gesture surprised her enough that her eyes stung. He slid her the first 2 slices without looking up. After dishes, Sloane stood by the open pantry and made notes on her phone. Evelyn went to the living room and felt the new angle of the couch in her knees. The news murmured. She turned off the television and listened to the house. Pipes shifted. A siren faded. A gull called once and then decided it had nothing more to say. She collected the dry cards and brought them to the bedroom. The silver frame on the dresser caught the lamplight. Jack smiled from inside it with his head tipped toward her like he was about to make a joke just for them. She opened the small wooden recipe box, slid the cards in, and paused. Her fingers found Sunday rolls again. She placed it on top and shut the lid with a sound that felt full. Saturday put a lid on the neighborhood. Clouds pressed low. Noah left early to meet friends. His boots thumped down the porch. The key missed the bowl and hit the table before it found its way home. The house sighed after the door closed. Evelyn made pancakes because pancakes were good at convincing a morning to start over. Sloane did not come down until almost noon. She had already spoken to 3 people by the way her voice carried the last shapes of conversations into the kitchen. Evelyn washed plates at the sink and glanced at the phone Sloane had left on the counter. It was lit with a banner that refused to fade. The name on the screen was Mom. The text was short and so calm it scraped. Did you tell the old woman yet? If she argues, tell Noah you will leave. She is terrified of being alone. People like that fold. Evelyn did not touch the phone. She did not need to. The words stayed lit until they timed out and went to black. Then memory held the exact shape of them anyway. Her hand found the edge of the counter and held there. She watched a drop of water slide from a plate to the sink and then into the drain. It made a sound like a pin hitting a floor in the next room. Sloane came back in. I am heading to Target. Text me if you think of anything. She took the phone, glanced at it, smiled a private smile, and tucked it into her bag. Evelyn dried the last plate. She lifted the recipe box from the corner and carried it to the dining table. She opened it and placed Sunday rolls on top again, as if the card would know what to do with the weight she was placing on it. The house held its breath. She reached for the mirror in the hall and looked at the woman who looked back. Her eyes were clear and still and not the eyes of someone who could be folded. Her voice did not have to be loud to be true. Enough, she said to the empty hall. The words settled into the wood. The third step lifted its complaint when she walked back toward the kitchen, a small sound that could not be ignored. Night pressed close to the windows. The house threw back its own small light, a line under the bedroom doors and a square from the hall. Evelyn came out for water and stopped. Sloane's door was cracked. Phone light drew a pale strip over the floorboards. Assisted living is easiest, Sloane said, voice low and clean. She will grieve for a week and then adjust. Noah will accept it if I frame it as care. The property can list by spring. A second voice came thin through the speaker. Evelyn could not make out the words, only a rhythm of agreement. The third stair creaked under her weight. She held still until silence covered it. Her heart pounded in a way she could feel in her wrists. She folds when you hint at leaving, Sloane said. You just have to speak like you're disappointed. She hates disappointing Noah. It is almost elegant. Evelyn moved back from the light and into the hallway's darker air. She did not trust her knees enough to walk, so she put her fingertips on the wall and waited for breath to find its way back to her. The hydrangea was a round shadow beyond the glass. In the kitchen, a tiny red light flickered on the stove clock. Somewhere the refrigerator compressor came on and steadied the noise in the room so her thoughts could line up. She poured water and drank without tasting. Then she went to the bedroom and shut the door until the latch clicked. The photo on the dresser held Jack frozen in a good grin. She touched the top edge of the frame and stood that way until the pressure in her chest faded. The night smelled like rain that had not started yet. At first light, she put on her coat and stepped out to the yard. Cold air bit her nose. The lawn shone with a thin lace of water. The hydrangea showed damage in the top leaves, brown burned edges where there should have been nothing but winter. She looked closer and saw tucked in at a node near the base a tiny push of green. The bud did not care about bleach or plans. It belonged to the plant, and it was doing what it knew how to do. She reached down and cupped the spot where the green stood up. The soil gave a little under her palm. A crow called from the neighbor's roof, and then another answered it from farther off. The street did not have to hear anything else to go on with its morning. Back inside, she rinsed her hands and dried them on the towel with the pale blue stripe. Her phone lay face down on the counter. She picked it up and scrolled to find the number that had sat in her contacts for years. A sigh came through the line before the voice, as if the man on the other end had been about to speak anyway. "Ravi, it is Evelyn." "Evelyn. It is good to hear you." He sounded like someone who made time for sentences. "How are you?" "Would you come by?" she said. "Sunday at 10. Bring the deed. I would like your help drafting a short-term rental for the primary bedroom. Separate bath, balcony, closet. Market rate for Ballard." A small pause, then paper sounds a pen clicking open. "All right," he said. "Do you have a figure in mind?" "I want you to set it by the neighborhood, not the lowest number." "Understood. And you are certain?" "I am." She watched steam rise from the sink as hot water met cold. "Thank you." She ended the call and breathed in the empty kitchen. The quiet was not gentler, but it was clear. She took the recipe box to the dining table and opened it. She placed Jack's chili at the bottom and moved Sunday rolls to the top again. She wanted the silly order and the serious one to sit together like they always had. The box closed with a sound that rang right in the room. She went to the primary bedroom and opened the curtains. Light did good things to the walls. The bed held the shape of sleep and something older. She changed the sheets and let the cotton snap once in the air before it settled. She dusted the dresser and thanked herself in a quiet way for choosing the heavy polish that Jack liked. She wiped fingerprints from the balcony door handle and cracked it open for a breath of salt and wet cedar, only a little then locked it. She set Jack's photo back on the nightstand, both of them looking toward the room. She lifted the keys from her pocket and set the big one on top of the dresser where she could see it. The metal made a sound that felt like a period placed carefully at the end of a needed line. In the living room, she moved chairs in by an inch. She placed a glass pitcher of water and 3 tumblers on the coffee table. She straightened the clock on the mantel until the face sat level. Its tick settled into her ear and stayed there like a metronome that belonged to her. Sloane came down mid-morning with a neat stack of folded towels. She carried them in a way that suggested an audience even when there was none. "I am ordering a memory foam topper," she said. "Your office is small. Memory foam helps when people age." Evelyn nodded and reached for a towel. It was white and new and did not smell like the house at all. "Will your parents come in their own car?" Evelyn asked. "They will take the train and rent one." Sloane set the towels on the couch. "We should declutter. People sleep better without visual noise." "Visual noise," Evelyn said. She did not smile. "We can keep the essentials." "Exactly," Sloane said, as if agreement had been her idea. She lifted the picture of Jack in the paper hat and looked at it from different distances. "We can archive. I will set up bins." Evelyn took the frame back and returned it to the console. She lifted the ceramic bowl and put it back on the entry table, the one with the nick that made a groove for a ring to catch. She set her keys in the bowl and heard the clean clink. Then she stepped back and looked at the rectangle of the hall. It held. At lunch, Noah came in smelling like wet leaves. He shook his jacket and put it on a chair. The jacket dripped into a small dark circle on the floor that spread itself and stopped. "Big day at work," he said. He kissed the top of her head and reached for the bread box. "What did you get up to?" "Cleaning," she said, "a few calls." He nodded and reached for the butter. He spread it in a quick wide stroke and then trimmed the edge with the knife the same way his father had. He stood close enough that his shoulder brushed hers, and something in the contact steadied both of them. "Did Sloane tell you?" he asked, not looking up. "About the schedule, bathroom, kitchen, quiet hours." She put it on the fridge. Evelyn poured him coffee. "I read it." He took the mug. "We all need to adapt." He spoke like he was aiming for neutral ground and had to measure the distance. "You are good at that." "I know how to live in my house," Evelyn said. The words were even. They did not need to travel fast to get where they were going. He looked at her, then away. "Are you packed for the office?" "I have what I need," she said. He opened his mouth and then shut it. He took a drink of coffee and set the mug down exactly on the ring a mug had made the week before. "I will fix the squeak on the 3rd stair," he said to change the channel in his head. "You can leave it," she said. "It tells the truth." Afternoon slid along the windows. Sloane left and returned with shopping bags that had the same logo printed on them. She rearranged the bathroom drawers and lined them with paper that smelled like lemons. She put a small vase on the dining table with eucalyptus stems that touched the air and made it smell faintly green. She wiped the fridge and moved Evelyn's magnet, the ceramic salmon, all the way to the side panel. Evelyn stood at the sink and washed a plate until it squeaked under her dishcloth. She dried her hands and went to the hall mirror. She adjusted the light switch so that the entry glowed. She placed a folded paper on the console under the bowl of keys. It was the copy of the deed that Ravi had emailed and then printed for her. She did not need to look at it to know what it said. Evening settled into rain again. The house embraced the sound the way a coat holds a person in weather. Evelyn checked the hydrangea through the glass and saw the bud as a slightly darker shadow against the stem. It had changed since morning only by the measure of faith. She turned off the kitchen light. The clock on the mantel kept time with her breath. The third stair spoke softly when Noah went up to bed. In the quiet that followed, she lifted the keys, felt their weight and returned them to the bowl. The clink was clean and final in the dark. Sunday came bright and sharp, the kind of Seattle morning that pretends it never rains. Evelyn made the bed tight enough to bounce light. She opened the curtains and let the room take a breath. The house smelled like lemon oil and coffee. The clock on the mantel counted toward 10 in clean clicks. At 9:30, the doorbell gave one polite note. Ravi stood on the porch with a leather case and a wool scarf. He stepped in and took everything in with a single look. The console table, the ceramic bowl, the small stack of papers under it. He nodded like a man confirming a recipe he already trusted. "Good morning," he said. "May I set up at the coffee table?" "You may," Evelyn said. She poured him water and carried it in on a tray. The tumblers touched the glass pitcher with a round sound. Ravi placed the deed and a short document on the table. He slid a pen beside them. Noah came down the hall, rubbing sleep out of his face with the heel of his hand. He saw Ravi and straightened. "This is Mr. Patel," Evelyn said. "He helped your father and me with the house." Noah shook Ravi's hand and ran a thumb along the edge of the deed. He did not say anything. He did not need to. At 10, the bell rang again. Sloane came in from the driveway at the same moment, Cheek's bright voice already pitched for greeting. She opened the door wide. Marla and Don entered with rolling suitcases. Wheels bumped over the doorstep. Perfume and cold air and train station clung to their coats. Marla looked around with an open appraisal. Don breathed out like relief and put his bag down as if the floor had agreed to hold it. "Beautiful bones," Marla said. "And look at that crown molding." "Where do you want me?" Don asked. "Stairs or elevator?" "There is no elevator," Sloane said. She smiled at Evelyn without showing teeth. "The primary is ready, right?" Evelyn stood beside the coffee table. Her hands were quiet. "The primary is not vacant. Please sit. We will handle terms first." Marla blinked. Don half lowered himself into a chair and then stopped mid-bend. Sloane laughed softly as if the room had made a small joke. "This is Mr. Patel," Evelyn said. "He is here to help put things in writing." Ravi rose. "Good morning. I represent the owner of this property, Mrs. Evelyn Hart." His voice filled the room like a careful piano. He placed the deed where everyone could see it. The title is clear and in her sole name. If the primary bedroom is to be used by guests, there will be a rental agreement. Sloane's smile tightened. "We are family. We do not need a contract." Marla's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Sloane, then at Noah, then at the walls. Ravi lifted the second paper. Short-term residential use of the primary suite, bedroom ensuite bath, balcony closet, access by agreement to shared areas, rent set at market rate for Ballard, deposit equal to 2 months' rent, utilities not included. Don made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Market rate? You must be joking." "I am not," Ravi said. "I can provide comps." "This is ridiculous," Sloane said. "Mom and Dad are not tenants." "They would be," Evelyn said, "if they stayed in my room." Noah took the deed in his hands and read the names. Jack Hart, Evelyn Hart, the year. His thumb found the grooved nick on the table and stayed there. He looked up at his mother and his eyes were not soft. "Why are we doing it like this?" he asked Sloane. "Because none of this needs to be theatrical," Sloane said. Her voice was pleasant and careful. "We can be decent and let my parents be comfortable." Evelyn turned toward Marla. "You are welcome in this house when you are invited. You will not move into my room. If you wish to rent it, you can sign. If not, you can stay elsewhere and visit." Marla looked down at her suitcase handle. Her fingers tightened until the knuckles went pale. Don rubbed the back of his neck. "We lost our place," he said. The words came out simple and honest. "We do not have a deposit. We came because Sloane said there was space." Evelyn nodded. "There is space, not without respect." Sloane's cheeks flushed. "Respect goes both ways." She turned to Noah. "Your mother has been resistant from the start. She refuses reasonable adjustments. She is making this hostile." Evelyn kept her gaze on Noah. "I found his recipes in the trash," she said. "The cards he wrote with his hand. I found bleach in the soil of the hydrangea he planted." She did not raise her voice. "There is a message on your mother's phone that suggests using your fear to make you agree." Sloane stepped forward. "That is out of context." Evelyn recited the words exactly as they had glowed on the screen. She did not add anything. She did not need to. The room held its breath. Noah's grip on the deed tightened until the paper bent. Noah's eyes moved from Sloane to Marla, then to Evelyn. His voice was quiet. "Did you send that?" Marla flinched. "I was angry. It was unkind. I should not have written it." Sloane reached for Noah's sleeve. He took a step back out of reach. The movement was small and clear. Ravi cleared his throat. "The law here is simple. The owner decides who occupies which room. If there is no agreement, there is no occupancy." Don looked at his suitcase. He looked at the staircase. He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "Mar, we should go." Marla's eyes flashed. Then the flash died. She nodded. "We will find a motel." She pulled up the handle of her bag. The wheel squeaked. The sound traveled through the room like the last note of a bad song. Sloane watched her parents turn toward the door, then swung back to Evelyn. "You are cruel," she said. "You have all of this, and you cannot share a room." Evelyn saw Jack in his paper hat sitting on the console looking toward the kitchen. She saw the mended seam in the rug where Noah had spilled juice when he was 5. She saw the small green bud on the hydrangea in her mind. "I am not a spare room," she said. "I am the person who lives here." Noah set the deed down as if it were something alive he did not want to scratch. "Mom," he said. The word cracked and then found its shape again. "I did not see it. I should have." "It is here now," she said. He looked at Sloane. The space between them grew all at once. He seemed to notice it the way you notice that a window is open only when the cold reaches your hands. Dawn opened the door. Cold air came in and circled around the furniture. Marla pushed her suitcase over the threshold and did not look back. The door shut on their backs with a sound that seemed to respect the wood. Ravi slid the papers into his case. He stood and met Evelyn's eyes. "If you need me, I am a call away." He shook Noah's hand and gave Sloane a courteous nod that did not invite more. The keys in the bowl clicked when he lifted his scarf from the hook. Noah sat down hard on the edge of the couch. He put his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands. His shoulders worked once. Then he looked up at Evelyn and said nothing because there was nothing to say that would be clean enough in that moment. Sloane stared at the closed door for a long count before she turned. "You will regret this," she said. The words came out flat. "Both of you." Evelyn picked up the picture of Jack and set it upright on the console. The angle was right again. She placed her palm on the frame and left it there. The room stayed very still. The clock found its tick again. By evening, the house had the echo that comes after visitors leave. Plates stacked, sink quiet. Noah ate a little and went to bed early. His steps on the stairs set off the same soft complaint on the third tread. The sound steadied her. Evelyn washed the last glass and set it in the rack. The kitchen light cut a warm square on the floor. Outside, the alley glimmered. The hydrangea was a darker shape in a darker corner. Her hands smelled like soap and lemon. She was drying the counter when Sloane came in. Her hair was pulled back. She had washed her face. The skin under her eyes looked thin. "I am not a bad person," Sloane said. Her voice was small in the big quiet. Evelyn folded the towel and set it on the oven handle. "Sit," she said. She pulled out a chair. She filled the kettle and set it on the flame. The burner clicked and caught. Steam would take its time. The kettle began to murmur. Steam feathered the window above the sink. Sloane sat where Evelyn pointed and folded her fingers until the knuckles shone. Up close, the skin under her eyes looked thin, almost blue. "I wanted to help my parents," she said. "I kept telling myself that was the good in it." Evelyn dropped 2 tea bags into mugs and poured. The scent of chamomile lifted into the room warm and grassy. She set one mug in front of Sloane and kept the other in her hands. "Help is a word," Evelyn said. "What you did is a set of actions." Sloane flinched at the word actions. She did not look away. "I am sorry I threw away the cards. I am sorry about the plant. I am sorry for the message. I am sorry for the tone." She tried to smile. "That is too many words for sorry." Evelyn looked at the steam. "You said what you said." Sloane stared into her tea as if it might tell her how to be. "Noah loves you. I knew that. I did a lot with that knowledge." They sat until the kettle cooled on its own. Rain ticked at the window and then stopped. In the quiet, the house held them without choosing sides. Sloane tipped her mug and let it warm her palms. She stood first. "I will go to bed," she said. "Thank you for the tea." "Good night," Evelyn said. Days rolled in with a softer sound. The printed guidelines stayed on the fridge, but no one looked at them. Evelyn made breakfast and ate slowly. She watered the hydrangea from a watering can that had belonged to Jack, and left a dark mark on the patio where she set it down. The top leaves still showed their burn, but the bud at the base pushed out a shade deeper than the day before. On Wednesday, Noah stood in the doorway of the bedroom with his hands in his pockets. He had shaved too fast and missed a small line along his jaw. He took the shape of the room in and then looked at the carpet. "Can we sit with Sloan tonight?" he said. "I would like it if you were there." When evening came, the three of them sat in the living room with the news turned off. The couch angle still felt new. Sloan sat with her hands together. Noah chose the edge of the chair where he could see both of them. His knee bounced and then stilled when he caught it. "I need to say something," he said. "I have not been seeing clearly. That is on me." He took a breath that showed in his shoulders. "Sloan, I want you to move out." Sloan closed her eyes. They were wet when she opened them. She nodded as if a line had been read and finished. "When?" "This weekend," he said. "I will help with the move. I will cover first month's rent." "I'm not leaving you stranded." She looked at him and then at Evelyn. Her mouth moved without sound when then found a sentence. "I hurt you," she said to Evelyn. Evelyn rested a palm on the arm of her chair. The fabric invited the hand to stay. "You did," she said. "I do not expect anything," Sloane's voice rasped. "I am sorry." Evelyn stood and stepped closer, not too close. "I heard you." Saturday wore a jacket of low clouds. A small truck backed into the driveway with a careful beep. Boxes moved through the front door like squares of a life, pacing out clothes and a lamp and a mixer still in its carton. Noah lifted more than necessary, breathing hard, head down. Sloane wrapped glass and towels without asking which belonged to whom. They met by the ceramic bowl where the keys lived. Sloane's purse strap slid along her shoulder and stopped. She put a hand on the bowl, then moved it away as if it were a line she should not cross. "Goodbye," she said. "Goodbye," Evelyn said. "Take care of yourself." Noah walked her to the truck and stood with his hands on the frame while the driver checked the straps. Sloane gave him a look that held things you cannot say in a doorway. He hugged her once. When she climbed into the cab, she did not look back. The door closed with a plain sound. Noah came inside and shut the front door. He stood with his back against it and let his head fall forward. For a moment, he looked like a boy after a game that had gone wrong. Evelyn went to him and put a hand to his shoulder. He pressed his palm over her hand and did not speak. The house eased into its rooms. The picture of Jack in the paper hat went back on the wall. The couch angle returned to the original notch in the rug. The ceramic salmon magnet took its old place on the front of the fridge and held a grocery list with a pencil smile. The recipe box lived on the pantry shelf where it could be reached without a step stool. Evelyn dabbed a little perfume on her wrist and could feel the day adjust to accommodate it. Diane came through the gate on a Tuesday with a pie and a joke about her scarf being too dramatic for a normal morning. They sat under the hydrangea and watched the bud become something deniable only by lies. It made a gentle sound in the wind that said nothing and everything. They talked about a book and the price of apples and the board that creaked on the back steps. On a Thursday, the pot roast went into the oven. Cinnamon and onion rose into the house and turned the ceiling into a lid a person could trust. Noah arrived late and stood in the kitchen doorway, just breathing. He did not say a big thing. He said carrots again and smiled in a way that had weight behind it. Spring loosened itself into the neighborhood. The bud on the hydrangea broke into layered blue, then more buds followed. The plant leaned with its own bloom, heavy and sure. Evelyn caught herself watching it from the kitchen window the way Jack had said she would, as if flowers could be news. In early summer, Noah brought someone home. Paige Allen stood on the porch with sunflowers wrapped in paper and a kind of unmaking smile. She wiped her shoes on the mat with care and said hello, like a person who knew how to be in a room. "Mrs. Hart," she said. "I have heard this kitchen is where the good things happen." "It is," Evelyn said. "Call me Evelyn." They cooked together that first afternoon. Paige chopped onions with a neat rhythm. She asked where things lived. When she reached for the salt, she did it after a question. She listened to the sound of the pot the way a person listens to a story. Later at the table, she picked up her glass and spoke without preamble. Noah glanced at her and then at Evelyn. "We wanted to ask something," he said. He looked a little sheepish and a little proud. Paige set her glass down and folded her fingers. "If the idea of us staying here is comfortable for you, we would like that. Under your rules first." Evelyn felt something gentle and deep move in her. She nodded. "Thank you for asking." "If it ever stops working for you," Paige said, "we will find a place. No questions asked." "Eat," Evelyn said, because the food was hot and the moment did not require more. In the store on a Tuesday, when the price of eggs had gone up again, she saw Sloane near the dairy case. The big lights made the floor shine too much. Sloane wore a plain jacket and carried a small basket. For a heartbeat, both of them looked around for exits. Then they walked toward each other. "How are you?" Sloane asked. "Fine," Evelyn said. "You?" "Working. Saving money." Sloane looked at the floor, then up. "I started therapy. It helps me think without winning. I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better than I have been." Evelyn watched her face and saw enough change to believe that sentence might be true. "I hope you are," she said. "Do you hate me?" Sloane asked. The words came out like she was testing a tender tooth. "No," Evelyn said. "I do not hate you." Sloane breathed. "Can you forgive me?" "I already did," Evelyn said. "I remember. I do not carry it." Sloane nodded. Her eyes went bright in a way that had nothing to do with the store's lights. "Thank you," she said. She took a carton of milk and moved past with a slight smile, as if that was all a person could safely carry down that aisle. The year rounded itself. The hydrangea went wild with bloom. The third stair still voiced its small truth. The ceramic bowl by the door held keys that came and went and always returned. The house learned new sounds and held old ones without spilling. On a Sunday, Evelyn pulled the wooden recipe box from the pantry and set it on the counter. She lifted the lid and saw Jack's blue ink in the curve of his hand. She took out Sunday rolls and placed it on the cutting board. The paper had softened at the edges from years of use. It did not mind. Paige came in with flour on her shirt and a bandage on her thumb where she had nicked herself cutting fruit. Noah set 2 mugs on the counter and leaned in the doorway with that light on his face again. "Teach me," Paige said, tapping the card with a fingertip. Evelyn smiled and measured warm water into a bowl. Yeast opened like small breath. The kitchen filled with a sound like quiet talking spoons against ceramic, the oven waking. She showed the push and fold of the dough. Paige's hands learned the pressure. Noah laughed when flour found his knuckle. Later, when the rolls were high and golden, Evelyn set them on a rack by the window. Outside, the hydrangea moved in a breeze so soft it barely counted. She went to the entry and lifted her keys from her pocket. The metal felt cool against her skin. She dropped them into the ceramic bowl, and the clink echoed small and perfect in the room. She stood a moment with her hand on the edge of the bowl, eyes on the doorway. On the console, the picture of Jack caught afternoon and sent it back as a thin line on the glass. The house took a deep breath that she could feel more than hear. In the kitchen, Paige pulled the first roll apart, and steam rose in a ribbon. Noah passed Evelyn a plate and did not look away when her eyes lifted to his. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.